Welcome to Time Travelling Team, the weekly podcast where we review every story of Doctor Who right from the very beginning. I'm Tricia.
And I'm Paddy. This week we're kicking off Season 5 of Doctor Who with The Tomb of the Cybermen. We're discussing the Doctor, the companions, the villains, and giving our thoughts on the story as a whole.
We'd also love to hear your thoughts on this story, so to join the discussion, you can check us out at Time Teamp, that's TIMETEAMP, on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, or you can email us at timetravellingteamp@teamproductions.com. Paddington, I will hand over to you for our story recap.
Episode 1. On a windswept plateau on Scarrow, the Doctor and Jamie show Victoria around the TARDIS. She is initially sceptical at their claims as to how the machine works, but the Doctor explains that he has had a long time to fine-tune the process. He also gives his age as 450 years old, a fact that shocks both of his young companions. He suggests to Jamie that he take Victoria to change into more comfortable clothes, with Jamie requesting that the Doctor try for a smooth takeoff for Victoria's first adventure. On a ridge above a rocky valley, a man named Toberman is watching a mining charge being placed at the base of one side of the valley. The other members of the group call out to him to return, with one of them, Vinner, giving out to his master Kaftan about Toberman. Elsewhere, the leaders of the expedition, Professor Parry and Klieg, are discussing their objectives with Captain Hopper, the man in charge of their guides. They inform him that their aim is to uncover the lost capital city of the planet Telos, but Hopper doesn't really care about that as he's eager to leave the planet. The demolition expert Rogers returns to the group and he sets off the charges. Although initially thinking they have failed, a section of the hill falls away to reveal a large pair of doors. The entire party rushes up the hill towards the doors, which are decorated with motifs of Cybermen. Captain orders a reward of £50 to the first man to open the doors, and one of the men rushes towards them, only to be electrocuted to death when he touches the doors. Before they can discuss the matter further, their attention is drawn to the sound of the TARDIS, which lands over a nearby ridge. Parry, along with Hopper and a few of his men, go to investigate, and they capture the travellers as they appear over the ridge. Jamie and Hopper begin to get into an argument, but the Doctor marches off towards the doors and investigates the body. Vinner suggests that they may be from a rival expedition, and when asked about their own expedition, Parry says that they are searching for the last remaining settlement of Cybermen and clues as to why they are now extinct. Hopper urges Parry and the others to return to the ship, saying that it is too dangerous to go forward. Jamie and Victoria urge the Doctor to leave as well, but he insists that they must stay, seeing as how the Cybermen are involved. He offers to help the expedition in their search, but Klieg is reluctant to let him join them, but Parry overrules him, reminding both him and Kaftan that their financial backing of the expedition doesn't give them any authority over it. Once the issue is resolved, the Doctor tests the doors and informs the group that they are now safe to open. However, neither he nor Jamie are strong enough to open them, and the Doctor suggests that the muscular Toberman have a go at them. Kaftan is reluctant to let him try, but Parry reminds her that this is part of the reason that she brought Toberman with her. Toberman successfully manages to pull open the doors, and the expedition marches in, paying little heed to the Doctor's warnings to be careful. After accidentally taking each other's hands, the Doctor and Jamie notice that Victoria is hesitant to proceed, and after complimenting her on her new wardrobe, the trio follow the expedition. The group enters a large command centre and begin to look around whilst off to the side, Klieg, Kaftan and Toberman conspire to eliminate the new arrivals. After a brief survey, Parry informs the group that the only other way out of the room is via a nearby hatch, but the Doctor points out that there are actually two other doors in the room, which he activates under the pretense of symbolic logic and general attentiveness. Parry then divides the party into two groups to explore each of the doorways, initially leaving Toberman and the two women behind. However, Victoria protests that they are just as capable as the others, and Vinner joins them as they go through the one doorway, whilst Jamie and Hayden, another party member, go through the other one. Meanwhile, the Doctor, Parry and Klieg stay behind to investigate the hatch, with the Doctor suggesting Klieg take the lead. Down the first hallway, Victoria's group enter a room and Vinner notices that Toberman is no longer with them. Kaftan says that she sent him to join Jamie's group to even out the numbers. Vinner then suggests that the room they are in is a conversion centre where Cybermen are made, but Kaftan says it could be a revitalization chamber instead. Meanwhile, Jamie and Hayden find themselves in a room that is littered with strange caterpillar-like creatures that Jamie points out are dead. Back in the main chamber, Klieg is at a loss for how to activate the rest of the machinery, and the Doctor suggests that maybe this for the best. He then inadvertently gives the stumped Klieg the binary sequence for how the machinery in the room works, and he protests as Klieg runs off to the command bank. The room then starts to shake, and the Doctor admonishes him before rushing off to check on the others. As he leaves, Klieg and Parry continue to try and open the hatch. While this was going on, none of them noticed Toberman sneak out the front entrance. Back in the revitalization chamber, Victoria has entered one of the pods out of curiosity, and Kaftan then pulls a lever, sealing her inside it. Vinner calls out to her to help get Victoria out. Their attempts prove to be useless, but after Victoria knocks on the pod door confirming she is still alive, Vinner rushes off to get help. Once he is gone, Captain starts to operate the controls but is stopped by the Doctor, who returns with Vinner. He manages to open the pod doors and comforts distressed Victoria before taking her to find Jamie. In the other room, Jamie notices one of the caterpillars move slightly, but gets distracted by Hayden as he activates a control panel which causes a strange hypnotic illusion to appear on the wall that puts Jamie into a deep trance. Jamie seems compelled to move closer to the wall, but Hayden pulls the lever back, breaking the connection. They both ponder why the Cybermen would need a hypnosis machine, and Hayden says he is willing to undergo the hypnosis treatment instead, citing that it is most likely a subliminal message of some kind. He gets close to the wall just as the Doctor and others arrive, and they try to shut down the machine. However, they are too late as the Cyberman slides into the room on a pulley and a wall-mounted gun fires at Hayden, killing him. Episode 2. Victoria screams out in fright as Hayden crumples to the floor, and the Doctor demands to know how Jamie operated the control panel. Parry soon arrives and is shocked to see what happened and tries to calm hysterical Vinner. They tell Parry what had happened, and he is initially skeptical of their claims, especially since the Cyberman is nowhere to be seen. The Doctor tries to get Jamie to remember the sequence he used to activate the machines, as he is curious over the fact that Hayden was shot in the back while the Cyberman appeared in the front of them. Jamie manages to activate the machine, and the Doctor tells the others to take cover as the cycle of events repeats itself, with the wall gun accidentally hitting the Cyberman this time. The Doctor theorizes that since the Cyberman is just an empty shell, they are most likely in a weapons testing room. Parry says that they should return to the main chamber with Hayden's body. As they're preparing his body, Victoria picks up the remnants of one of the caterpillars, and the Doctor tells her to be careful, informing her that it is something called a cybermat and that it would be safer to leave it alone. However, after he turns to leave, she places it in her bag. Toberman makes his way back into the main chamber and informs Captain that he has done what she asked him to do. Meanwhile, Klieg expresses his concerns that he will not be able to unravel the full code before they run out of time, but Captain reassures him that he has plenty of time. The others return before they can discuss anything else, and Parry informs everyone that he's decided it is too dangerous to stay, and so the expedition will return to Earth. Klieg and Captain object, but he shouts them down. Hopper then arrives and informs the group that they cannot leave as the ship's fuel pump has been sabotaged. Vinner says that they should leave the structure and return to the safety of the ship, but Hopper refuses as it could cause delays to the repairs, which he estimates will take at least 72 hours. The Doctor, however, gets him to admit that he doesn't want anyone on the ship until he figures out who the saboteur is. Klieg says that they can use this time to finish trying to open the hatch, and the Doctor decides to help him despite his protests and Toberman's threats. After a short while, Klieg manages to open the hatch, and Parry says that they should go to investigate. He tells Vinner to retrieve the cold weather clothing left to them by Hopper, and then says that they will all go down except for Victoria and Captain. Once again, Victoria tries to protest this, but the Doctor asks her to stay behind to keep an eye on Captain, and she reluctantly agrees to do so. Once the others are gone, Captain prepares some food for herself and Victoria. The men climb down the hatchway and find the area at the bottom of the ladder to be completely frozen over. They make their way into a larger chamber and are greeted by the sight of hundreds of cryogenic pods built into the wall like a giant honeycomb. Klieg announces that these are the tombs of the Cybermen. They begin to look around, with Klieg and the Doctor taking a look at a nearby control panel. Back up in the main chamber, Victoria falls into a deep sleep due to the food that Captain gave her being drugged. Captain then closes the hatch, sealing the others off in the tombs. Jamie climbs up the ladder to see if he can open it, whilst Vinner starts to panic that they will only be able to survive for a few hours. The Doctor notices that Klieg doesn't appear to be too concerned about their plight, and Klieg responds that logically the hatch can be opened from the inside as well as the outside. He then starts to work on the controls, but in actuality he is starting the awakening process for the Cybermen. The others notice the ice in the room beginning to melt, and they all watch as the Cybermen begin to remove in their pods. Parry and Klieg watch in amazement, but Vinner rushes to the control panel and starts to reverse the process. Suddenly, Klieg pulls a gun on him and orders him to step away from the panel. Vinner refuses, and Klieg kills him before ordering the others to stay away so he can start the awakening process again. Up in the chamber, Victoria awakens and asks Captain what is going on. After a series of cryptic responses to her questions about the others, Victoria realizes that she is the one who closed the hatch, and she goes to open it again. However, Captain pulls a gun on her and tells her to wait until she gets a message from Klieg. As this is going on, the Cybermat in Victoria's handbag comes back to life and chews its way free. Victoria sees it's coming towards them and calls out a warning to Captain, who ignores her, thinking that she is trying to trick her. The Cybermat jumps up and bites Captain on the neck, causing her to drop her gun as she falls to the floor unconscious. Victoria picks up the gun and shoots the Cybermat, destroying it. She then runs off to find Hopper. Back in the tomb chamber, Jamie suggests to the Doctor that Klieg has played them all along, but the Doctor admits that he was onto Klieg from the start, but was curious to see what his exact goal was. They then listen as Klieg explains that he belongs to a secret society called the Brotherhood of Logicians, whose wish to control the Earth, and they plan on using the Cybermen to assist them in their goals. They then all turn to watch as the Cybermen start to emerge from their pods. Several of them open an ornate sarcophagus and a figure emerges, who the Doctor calls their leader and is known as a Cyber Controller. Klieg addresses him and tries to assert his dominance over the Cybermen by saying that he is responsible for their resurrection, but the Cyber Controller grabs him by the arm, crushing it and forcing him to his knees. The Cyber Controller then addresses the others, saying that you belong to us, you shall be like us. Episode 3. Perry realizes that the Cybermen had expected the arrival of humanity at some point, and so according to the Doctor, they based all their operational components of the machinery on logical algorithms, thereby ensuring that they would only be awoken by the smartest minds. Jamie suggested they would make a run for it, but the Doctor says that they wouldn't get very far, and instead says to the group that he will try and buy some time. He goes to the Cyber Controller and asks why the Cybermen froze themselves. The Cyber Controller says that it was a matter of survival after their 2 previous encounters with the Doctor had left them near extinction. He informs the group that they will be converted into Cybermen to be used as an invasion force to take over Earth. Perry protests the plan, but he is ignored as the Cybermen begin to advance on the group. Jamie makes a break for it and manages to get to the hatch ladder, but he is shocked into unconsciousness by one of his pursuers. Meanwhile, Toberman also tries to resist, but his efforts are rewarded with him being thrown into a nearby stack of stasis pods, where he lies unconscious. Back in the upper chamber, Victoria returns with Hopper and one of his men and insists that they open the hatch to let the others out. However, Hopper is reluctant to do so as he doesn't want to bring any more undue danger upon them. He asks her how the hatch was closed in the first place, and she informs him that it was Kaftan, who is recovered and is now feigning unconsciousness. When he still refuses to help, Victoria says that she will pull every lever on the control panel in an effort to free the others, and this spurs Hopper to help her. As they are looking for the correct lever, Kaftan comes to and picks up the gun and tells the others to move away from the console until Klieg messages her. Victoria pretends that the Cybermat is alive and screams, distracting Kaftan long enough for Hopper and his colleague Callum to apprehend her. Hopper and Victoria then manage to open the hatch, and Hopper decides to go down to the others, taking a few smoke bombs with him. Victoria demands to go with him, but he refuses, telling her it is too dangerous. In the tombs, Klieg is informed by the Cyber Controller that he will be the leader of the Earthbound Cybermen, a fact that he initially seems pleased with until he discovers that he will be converted into a Cyberman himself. The others are told that they will be placed into cryogenic sleep to await their fates. Suddenly, the room fills with smoke from one of Hopper's grenades and he rushes in, telling the others to follow him. Klieg gets separated from them, but he still manages to get away whilst the dazed Toberman is recaptured, where he is repeatedly shocked so as to be rendered unconscious. The Cyber Controller takes notice of his power and says that he could be useful. The others, with the exception of Klieg, manage to escape back into the main chamber, but just as the Doctor is making his way out of the hatch, a Cyberman grabs him by the leg and starts to pull him back down the ladder. Jamie and Hopper struggle to rescue him, and Victoria picks up a nearby flask to club the Cyberman with. The Cyberman then grabs at her, thereby allowing the Doctor to escape and the hatch to be closed down on top of it. The Cyberman attempts in vain to break through the hatch before retreating back into the tomb. Once all the Cybermen are gone back down into the tomb, Klieg climbs up the ladder and knocks on the hatch. The Doctor suggests that due to the softness of the knocking that it is most likely Klieg or Toberman trying to get in. Hopper is reluctant to open it, but Parry says that they must let them in even if they are murderers, to save them from the Cybermen. They open the hatch to let Klieg, who informs them that Toberman is still a captive, but amazingly he refuses to give up on his plans to ally with the Cybermen. The Doctor suggests that Klieg and Kaftan be confined in the hypnosis room, and Callum takes them away. Hopper departs to go check on the repairs to the rocket, saying that the hatch should protect them from the Cybermen. In the tombs, the Cyber Controller orders that some of the more mature Cybermats be activated to target Toberman's brain, but they are still dormant due to their long time in hibernation. After revitalizing them and using them on Toberman, he orders the Cybermats to attack the main chamber. Meanwhile, Klieg and Kaftan remove the gun from the hands of the practiced Cybermen and get it working. Klieg then states his intention to use it to blackmail the Cybermen into his service, a plan that Kaftan is in complete agreement with. However, first they must deal with the others, especially the Doctor. Back in the main chamber, the Doctor and Victoria have a heart-to-heart discussion whilst the others are asleep. They discuss Victoria's sadness over the death of her father, and the Doctor shares with her the coping mechanisms for how he deals with the loss of his own family. He then tells her to get some rest and he keeps an eye on the hatch. Suddenly, the Cybermats invade the room and the Doctor raises the alarm, saving a sleeping Callum before one of them can kill him. They try to make a break for freedom, but all the exits are blocked off by the Cybermats. The Doctor orders everyone to get back into the control room and then labels a circle of cabling around their position. Once everyone is in the circle, he throws a switch that electrifies the floor, causing the Cybermats to deactivate. Suddenly, Victoria reminds them about Klieg and Kaftan, and the group goes to check up on them. However, after they arrive, Klieg shoots at the Doctor. Episode 4. Callum pushes the Doctor out of the way at the last second and takes the blast in the shoulder. Klieg then disarms the others, and Kaftan says that they will make good specimens for the Cybermen. Klieg then opens the hatch and calls down that he wishes to speak with the Cyber Controller. The Cyber Controller informs the other Cybermen that they will need to conserve their energy, and so orders them back into their stasis pods. Meanwhile, he wakes up Toberman, who is now partially cyberized and under his control, and together they ascend to the main chamber. Klieg holds them at gunpoint, saying that he knows the Cybermen are running low on energy, and voices his intention to blackmail them into his service. He also demands that Toberman, who is now completely mute and non-resistant, to be released, but before he does so, the Cyber Controller shares a telepathic order with him. The Cyber Controller then agrees to Klieg and Kaftan's demands, and in return is allowed to revitalize itself. Klieg sends them in with the Cyber Controller, whilst keeping Victoria with him as a hostage. He then orders Toberman to close the hatch, but Kaftan ends up doing it when Toberman doesn't respond. In the revitalization room, the Doctor notices that the Cyber Controller seems to be moving progressively slower as its energy levels drop. The Doctor offers to help revitalize it, but it is actually a ruse to trap it in the pod. However, once the pod is sealed, the revitalization process begins almost immediately, and so Jamie ties ropes around it to keep it sealed. However, the now fully powered Cyber Controller bursts free of the pod and then sends a telepathic message to Toberman. Back in the main chamber, Victoria tries to make Klieg and Kaftan see that the Cybermen won't obey them, but it doesn't work, and instead informs them about seeing another discarded Cyberman weapon in the revitalization room. Kaftan says that they need to be wary in case any of the others manage to get it working, and Klieg orders Toberman to stand watch over the door. However, Toberman attacks him instead and disarms him, just as the others and the Cyber Controller enter the room. It orders Kaftan to open the hatch, but she refuses and uses her own gun to attack the Cyber Controller. It does no damage, and the Cyber Controller uses Klieg's gun to kill her before opening the hatch and summoning the Cybermen up. The Doctor appeals to Toberman to help them, using Kaftan's death as a motivator, and so he attacks the Cyber Controller and throws it into the control panel, severely damaging it. The Doctor points out that the Cybermen are starting to come up the hatch, and Jamie uses the cyber gun to kill them before they can come into the chamber. He then says that the coast is clear, and Victoria urges them to close the hatch, but the Doctor says he needs to go into the tombs to ensure the Cybermen will never get out again. He tells Jamie to stay with Victoria, and he begs Toberman to help him, saying that the Cybermen are responsible for Kaftan's death, and they will need to be destroyed. They then make their way down the hatch whilst the others tend to the wounded Callum. As they do this, no one notices Klieg retrieve the cyber gun and follow the Doctor and Toberman. Down in the tombs, the Doctor and Toberman observe the Cybermen sleeping in their stasis pods. Toberman, in his fury, starts to smash some of the machinery, but the Doctor stops him and instead asks him to keep an eye on them whilst he restarts the refreezing process. Klieg arrives and orders him away at gunpoint, and he begins to reverse the process to wake them up. He states that with the Cyber Controller dead, the rest of the Cybermen will bow down to his superior intellect. He then notices the Doctor trying to signal to someone behind him, and he then threatens to kill the Doctor unless the unseen person comes out. Jamie enters the room, and Klieg forces them all over to one side of the room. The Doctor starts to flatter Klieg and inflate his ego by telling him that he could rule the universe with the aid of the Cybermen, a fact that Klieg easily agrees with. However, it is merely a ploy to gauge Klieg's level of sanity. Klieg rails against both the Doctor's and Jamie's goading and threatens to kill them, but instead decides to let the Cybermen deal with him. Suddenly, a Cyberman attacks Klieg from behind and kills him. It then goes to the control panel to awaken its brethren, but Toberman starts to fight with it, allowing the Doctor and Jamie to begin the freezing process. Toberman gains the upper hand in the fight and crushes the control unit of the Cyberman, causing it to dissolve. They then watch as the tombs start to fully freeze over again. Meanwhile, in the main chamber, Hopper returns to let the others know that the ship is fully repaired, but says he won't go back down into the tombs to help the others. This earns him a backhanded compliment from Victoria. However, the others appear through the hatch, and the Doctor goes to the control panel, and he rewires the locking mechanisms so that anyone touching either the main door, the hatch, or the control panel itself will receive a substantial electric shock, but not enough to be fatal. He tells the others to go outside, but Jamie remains behind to assist him. As they are ensuring the hatch is fully secure, the Cyber Controller gets up, forcing them to flee out of the main door. They try to seal the main door, locking the Cyber Controller in and completing the electric circuit. The others try to help them by using poles to close the door, but the Cyber Controller is too strong and starts to push the doors open again until Toberman intervenes. Despite the Doctor's pleas to save himself, Toberman sacrifices his life to close the doors, and in doing so kills the Cyber Controller as well. Everyone mourns the loss of Toberman before going their separate ways. Jamie asks if it's truly the end of the Cybermen, and the Doctor responds that it could be, but he doesn't like to make predictions. As they leave, none of them notice a cybermat making its way towards Toberman's corpse. End of the story. So now that is the story recap and the first fully intact story in quite a while, we're going to go over to the trivia spot with Tricia. So what do you got for us?
So the air date for this first story of season 5 was the 2nd of September 1967 to the 23rd of September 1967. Our writing duo for this story is Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis, both of whom we have discussed before. Mm-hmm. This is Kit's final writing credit for Who, though he does have a few more sort of contribution credits, but not any like straight out writing credits. Mm-hmm. Jerry Davis, we still have one more story to discuss for him, which is Revenge of the Cybermen, which we won't be talking about for a long, long while yet.
Yeah, at least another, a year by my reckoning? Almost
I'd say about that, yeah. The director for the story is Morris Barry. We previously discussed Morris before when we talked about the Moon Base, which he also directed. This is the earliest second Doctor story to survive in its entirety, as you alluded to a while ago. We have no animation this time. We have no recreations. It is our full cast straight through from beginning to end. And it's crazy to think that this is the earliest since like Ben and Polly have come and gone.
Yeah.
And this is our first continuous story. This is also the only story of season 5 that is not 6 episodes.
Yeah, it's one thing now that because I just finished watching The Ice Warriors, which will be done in 2 weeks' time. And the six episode kind of arc it's an unusual format, seeing as how with Hartnell it was kind of up and down and all over the place.
Yeah, I wonder they're trying to find the perfect number of episodes to tell a story. This story had several working titles, including The Ice Tombs of Telos and The Cybermen Planet. I like The Ice Tombs of Telos. That sounds like a cool title.
It does, and as well, it kind of keeps in with the motif that every Cyberman story so far hasn't had the title of Cyberman in it.
Yeah, and that was actually something I was going to get to later on. Like, this is the first story to actually include Cybermen in the title, although it does set up what's going to be a semi-regular naming convention for the Cybermen stories, where it becomes of the Cybermen. Like, that doesn't happen for all Cybermen stories going forward. It's kind of a semi-regular thing. Unlike Dalek stories, where Daleks are, like, nearly always mentioned.
Yeah,
I think the Chase...
The Chase is probably the only one.
Yeah.
Which is, I remember, I think I discussed it with you and other people, that when the show was revived, there's an episode called Dalek, which is like the first introduction of Daleks into the revised format. And I'm like, that's like as big a spoiler as you can possibly get to reintroducing this thing,
Yeah.
And like, obviously, there's the whole thing of like, oh, I know what the story is going to be about, but there's something to be said as well for just because you know who's going to be in it doesn't really indicate as to what the story is going to be about. Like we saw last week with Evil of the Daleks, the amount of red herrings in that story. The red herrings of the Daleks.
This story also introduced the Cyber Controller and the Cybermats. We have not seen those before. The Cybermats were controlled in a variety of means. Some were on wires, some were basically clockwork, like wind-up toys. Some were the sort of, the toys as a kid where like you drag it back and let it go.
Yeah.
Some were those, and some were radio controlled. Now, we mentioned last week that the Dalek controllers weren't very nice to Deborah Watling, should we put it that way?
Yeah.
And they used to chase her around. Yeah, the Cybermat radio controllers were similar, and when they weren't filming, they would chase her around the set with them.
These people are assholes.
Toberman was actually originally intended to be deaf, hence his lack of significant speech in the script. The idea would be that he'd have a hearing aid that would foreshadow his partial transformation into a Cyberman. And in the novelization, we actually get to see that included in it, which I think would have been an interesting way. It sort of reminds me of, again, the revival, when we see Cybermen again, the way they sort of foreshadow that with certain
with certain things. Although
things.
that would have been, I think, no, I don't know whether it was a conscious choice or not, but that would have been two was it people of color strongman characters with some sort of sensory impairment in a row.
Well, we don't know if last week's guy, he didn't have a sensory impairment because he could vocalize because he made noise when he died. He just didn't speak.
I suppose, yeah, because I think it's like it's just implied that he's mute, but then again, like, yeah, because it didn't go to the ins and outs of it. I would like to see the novelization of that story to see if it's mentioned.
Yeah, it probably would have been a bit much to have two stories back to back, though.
Yeah.
With that. Deborah Watling has admitted that the scene where Victoria gets sealed inside the sort of Cybermen revitalization sarcophagus thingy was actually really hard for her because she's claustrophobic. I can totally relate to that.
Oh, like, absolutely, because like the revitalization chamber, it's essentially like it's the cutout of a Cyberman, so it's almost like, a mold. And if she was in that, that's all the range of movement that she would have, as opposed to like, it being a box and she could kind of wiggle around in.
Yeah.
So that's way worse,
You mentioned in your recap at one point the Doctor and Jamie accidentally hold hands. That was actually Patrick Troughton and Fraser Hines came up with the idea for that, and they didn't bother telling the director, they just did it. So, like, we've spoken before, like the shooting schedule for Doctor Who didn't allow a lot of time to start again. So they just did it without telling anyone. So they have to keep it in, which reminds me of a similar story from a future Doctor, where again, it's sort of, this would be funny.
Yeah.
Don't ask permission.
Just do it.
Just do it.
And because of this particular gag, shipping was, started for the Doctor and the second Doctor and Jamie.
I'm pretty sure it probably started a little bit before this, but I'm sure it comes in very heavily.
I think what I know definitely is that one image that is used in the whole shipping of the Doctor and Jamie is the still from the Faceless Ones, where they're hiding from the policeman at the very first episode, and like you kind of got Jamie kind of huddled underneath the Doctor, like, so I think that was probably the start of it.
Matt Smith, who will eventually play the 11th Doctor in 50 million years from now for us, has said that The Tomb of the Cybermen is one of his favourite Doctor Who stories.
Yeah, I actually remember reading that when he was trying to get a feel for how he wanted his version of the Doctor to be, he said that this was the story that really kind of made a huge impact on his choices. And like even like some of his aesthetics, like his whole thing of wearing the bow tie. The Patrick Troughton's Doctor always wore a bow tie, even though it's a bit more scruffy. So it's actually kind of cool to see that even in the revived era, you're still pulling all these things from the classic side of things to form your character.
On to our cast. So as Hopper, we have George Rubacek.
I'm going to go with Rubacek.
I think that makes no sense. This is his only Doctor Who acting credit. His non-Who credits include You Only Live Twice, The Dirty Dozen, $1 Billion Brain, Star Wars, where I knew he looked familiar. He is the either incredibly stupid or like secret rebel agent spy Imperial officer who decided not to blow up the escape pod that had R2 and 3PO in it.
Yeah, and they take the piss out of the Family Guy. Oh, are we saving on lasers now? Does it cost, to shoot?
Yeah, so he played that particular Imperial officer, and he was also in The Spy Who Loved Me. Klieg is played by George Pastel. This is the only Doctor Who acting credit for George. His non-Who acting credits include Interpol Calling, Ghost Squad, From Russia with Love, The Indian Tales of Rudyard Kipling, Z-Cars, and The Saint.
I had to look, because it piqued my interest, I had to look up who George Rubacek is in The Dirty Dozen. He is at the very start of the movie, he's the prisoner that gets hung. And Lee Marvin watches it. But as for George Pastel, I know who he is again from Russia with Love. He is a train conductor that James Bond hires to keep a murder secret. I even know the dialogue he says because it's stuck in my head with that voice of his.
George Pastel passed away back in 1976. Kaftan is played by Shirley Cooklin. Again, Shirley's only Doctor Who acting credit. She was actually married to new producer Peter Bryant. and her character was written specifically for her by Jerry Davis. Interesting onset thing was that Fraser Hines, flirted with her a bit, not realizing that she was his boss's wife. Which is just adorable. Her other acting credits include Children of the New Forest, The Adventures of Sir Lancelot, Paul Temple, a TV series version of Macbeth, and Z-Cars again. Toberman is played by Roy Stewart. This is the first of 2 Doctor Who acting credits for Roy. We will see him again in the Tower of the Autons. He also had an uncredited role as a Saracen in The Crusade. His other acting credits include The Count of Monte Cristo TV series, Adam Adamant Lives, The Avengers, and Julius Caesar. Roy passed away back in 2008. The Cyber Controller is played by Michael Kilgarriff. We will see Michael again in future stories, including Robot. Morris Barry really wanted Kilgarriff in this role. Like, Michael Kilgarriff is incredibly tall, right? When we get to Robot, there's a very cute story about Elizabeth Sladen's daughter when she met him. But he's an incredibly tall guy in general. So these sort of, like the Cyber Controller is like a head taller than everyone else. He's a good role for that. So Kilgarriff knew nothing about Doctor Who or the Cybermen. And when Morris Barry came to him, he was completely surprised to learn that he'd be in the silver suit and that it'd be fully covered up. But it took him about 3 days to decide that he would actually have the role. He also didn't realize that he wouldn't have any lines, so that took a lot to sort of parse through his brain before he continued or agreed to take the role. But we'll discuss Michael more in the future because we're going to be seeing him again.
And I have one other small piece of trivia back in relation to Roy Stewart. I knew I recognised him from something. He's in Roger Moore's first Bond movie, Live and Let Die. He plays the son of a previous James Bond ally back in the very first Bond movie in Dr. No. Yeah.
So thus ends the trivia spot, and now we're on to our character discussion. So as always, we have the Doctor, the companions, and the villains. So Paddy, I'm going to turn it over to you for our first full story of Patrick Troughton. What did you think of the Doctor this time around?
So I absolutely loved him. One of my notes here is that he's doing his best Jack Burton impression. Jack Burton is a character from a movie that I love, Big Trouble in Little China, which again is the whole thing of, oh my god, you can come back and gain power from beyond the grave, or get checked into a psycho ward, whichever comes first. And so when he does that with Klieg, it's like, oh my god, with the Cybermen you could rule the universe. Right, now I know you're insane. I love that part, and I'm really glad that this story survived, or at least there's one section of it that I'm really glad it survived, is his heart-to-heart with Victoria over discussing, because she kind of says you're old, you probably can't remember your family, and he's like, oh no, I can remember if I want to, but I have to really focus and really picture it. And it's like, that's heartbreaking, because he's alluding to not just Susan, he's alluding to the other members of the family. Yeah,
I do wonder. So I think that's a beautiful scene.
Yeah.
By the way, and I know you were waiting for me to finish watching it to get my opinion.
Yeah.
And I nearly told you to F off that we have this discussion. It's recorded for a reason and you can't get spoilers.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that he took the time to have that conversation with her.
Yeah.
And that he shows some very genuine concern that she's okay being with them, because it wasn't really her choice. And unlike our other companions I've traveled, unlike Vicky, for example, Vicky didn't really have a choice.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? She was on this planet by herself. Whereas Victoria's safety and well-being was entrusted to the Doctor by her father in the previous episode.
Yeah.
So I think it's very sweet. The thing that I find with him saying, I have to try to remember them and blah, 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 I wonder how much of that is him being truthful and how much of that is him just saying what she needs to hear. Because she clearly makes a big thing of his age. It's kind of like her little running joke throughout the whole story is the fact that he's 450 years old. But he's not the same as an older human would be.
Yeah.
Do you know? So I don't think he needs to try to
Mm.
remember Susan. I don't think that he needs to make a concerted effort to remember people. Personally, I think that he was just saying that stuff for her benefit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he actually, at this point in his life, I don't know if that was true for him. I think he knew that eventually it would get to that point, but I don't think that was true at this point in his life.
No, that's a good point, because like again, it's one of those things where like we're kind of seeing, especially since the last story, like the Doctor isn't above misdirection and sometimes outright lying. So yeah, like and like the scenario here is like kind of different, because like he could have very well tried and dropped her back to Root Maxtable, because they were obviously friends, so she could have lived with Root and helped look after Arthur and stuff like that. But I really liked it. I thought it was a fantastic thing, and like we've seen so much versatility from Patrick Troughton, that this was just, I think, kind of rounding off his complete like range, as in terms of like, okay, we've seen him be the buffoon, we've seen him be the slightly sinister, we've seen her be the manipulative, we've seen him be like the kind of the humorous. Here is like the softer side, and like it's like we saw it with again with William Hartnell in his like kind of little moments with Victoria and with Barbara, and even with Kameka from back in the Aztecs. So again, just kind of keeping that tradition of like the Doctor is more than just what he is on the outside.
I think I was trying to compare this back to Bill, and I think the closest thing that comes to this for me with Bill was actually his monologue at the end of the massacre.
I had a feeling that you were going to say it.
Because he's never like Bill didn't have these conversations. Like Doc Bill didn't have these conversations with anybody. He could be very gentle with people. Like he was very gentle with Kameka. And obviously he had his sit down talk with Barbara at the end of Edge.
Yeah.
But this is very different. Do you know, this is a purely emotional, heartfelt conversation out of concern, which Doc Bill didn't. It's not that Doc Bill wasn't concerned, he was, but he was the stiff upper lip older gentleman. He didn't have those conversations.
Yeah.
So it's very nice to see that in this iteration of the Doctor, he's more open with that. And he's more open to those connections. He's not as standoffish as Doc Bill would have been. Because like I said, the closest we have to Doc Bill having a conversation like this is when he's talking to himself.
Yeah.
Or even like when he was saying goodbye to Susan.
Yeah.
He was talking at her, not with her.
Yeah. It's like, it kind of does bring back, I think I said about Power of the Daleks, it was like that you're kind of given this impression of, always like a Jekyll and Hyde scenario, where this is like some other aspects of the Doctor coming out. And in a way it kind of is, like, because this is like, he's almost unguarded. And he's no longer, like, I won't say worried, but he's no longer adverse to having these type of conversations with the people he travels with.
Yeah, and like a thing that I find with the Doctor, or even like right up to now, like we're currently, on the 13th Doctor with Jodie Whittaker, I think that I find the whole way up is that, people say, oh, the Doctor's different, or the Doctor's changed, or whatever. And I don't think the Doctor ever does change. I think the way we see each Doctor represented is it's showing parts of the whole. Often our human characters present as more complex than the Doctor ever does. We see more highs and lows with our human characters than we do with the Doctor. And so the regeneration is a great way to showcase that, he/she, they, whichever pronoun is best for the Doctor in his entire lifetime, does have all of these sides, but doesn't always show them.
Yeah.
Do you know? Like we said, that Doc Bill didn't really show fear.
Yeah.
That's not to say he was never afraid. Like,
no.
So I quite like that, and I quite like the fact that Troughton's is so different in terms of exposing himself emotionally.
Yeah. And like, I suppose just one last point there about Doc Bill was that, like, he would never show fear, but you knew that he was afraid, even though he wouldn't show it. Like, a good example, I think, is the end of Dalek's Master Plan, when he's like, he gives out to Sarah Kingdom for staying behind with him, when he explicitly said, just go, because he knows what's about to happen. But it is, again, like, you know, I won't, like, refreshing is the wrong word, but it's just, it's a joy to see the versatility in the character, you know? And, like, throughout the entirety of the last season, and we're sitting off like a really strong start to this new season, Patrick Troughton is like just filling the role perfectly, I think.
Yeah. For me, I think it was lovely for me to get to see his first full story.
Yeah.
End to end. Like, I've mentioned before, the only Patrick Troughton story I had watched before we started this watch through was War Games.
Yeah.
Which I think is complete.
You know, it is. It's fully complete.
Yeah. But that's his final story, and I watched that 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't remember a whole lot from it, to be honest. So to get to see now his first full story end to end is great. I think this was a very strong story for that. I do have one criticism.
Yeah.
I always seem to have criticisms for Doc Pat. If you don't want them to get into the tomb, don't tell them all of the answers.
That was the thing, because like he says to Jamie, like, you know, like, I tried to give him enough rope to hang himself with, and now it's completely horrendously backfired. And I'm like, sometimes
stop doing that. Just keep your mouth shut.
I was like, sometimes you are a fucking idiot.
But I wonder if part of that, and this is all going back to like the different sides and the different components of the Doctor, I wonder if that is just him showing off. He likes being the smartest man in the room. And to see people struggling with something, I wonder if it's almost like this compulsion that like he has to show that he knows exactly what it is, and then he tries to hide it behind, oh well, I just showed them to see how much they could figure out by themselves. It was like,
yeah, it kind of brings back to when, you know, Zaroff in the Underwater Menace, and it was like, you know, so what is your plan? I was like, interesting, but you do realize that could lead to this. You're still going with that? Fair enough.
Yeah. But sometimes, like, don't give them answers they don't already have.
Yeah. But yeah, so please stop doing that. And I know that, like, you know, the payoff in terms of humor is fantastic with the whole, you know, my God, you could be all powerful. Well, now I know you're crazy, so it's just but yeah, another, like, just again a fantastic performance by him.
Yeah, totally agree.
So now we're on to the companions. So we have Jamie, Victoria, and Hopper.
So we do Jamie first, I suppose. I've mentioned this I mentioned it in the Faceless ones, and I mentioned it again last week. I'm going to mention it again because I think this story has sort of brought that point to a natural conclusion. I'm loving that we're continuously Jamie's acclimation to future tech and the fact that it's not a problem.
Yeah.
He doesn't always know what he's doing. But he's fully capable of going, oh yeah, I'll do these levers, and yeah, you stand there and do the block your eyes thing with the hypno screen, and I'll do this. And he's perfectly able to man a console, to explain to Victoria what they're doing, where they're going. Like, he's absorbing so much and learning so much as he goes that he may not understand everything, but he's able to live in it without any issue. Do you know?
Yeah.
Which I think is great, because, I mean, that's a concern when you have a character from further back in the past than when the show airs.
Yeah.
That's a concern, like, oh, how are they going to deal with the future tech and stuff? And I love how it's basically a non-issue with Jamie. There's a few, like, cultural and technological advancements that he's not familiar with, but like, he's not afraid of any of it, and it doesn't really become a blocker to him. So I like how we continue to see that in this story. And one of the things that there's like two things in this that I particularly loved. The first was the fact that, like, almost from the minute they arrive and Jamie finds out that it's Cybermen, he clearly wants to fucking leave.
Yeah.
And like when the Doctor's like, okay, if you don't want to be in the room, leave. And he's like, not you, Jamie. And Jamie's just like, oh, for fuck's sake. It's like he resigns himself to the fact that he has to be there. but he really doesn't want to, and you can just tell it on his face, or he's just like, ah, fuck's sake.
Yeah, he's like, it's just like this whole thing of like, he's the kind of guy that would go through a choose your own adventure book, but read every ending before he made the decisions on which way he wanted to go. I was like, nope, not having this, not having this, not having this. Oh, cool, we're off to the ice cream factory. I like it.
Yeah, and like his dynamic with the Doctor is becoming so good. Particularly after obviously the rocky conversations they had last week. But like his reaction to the Doctor's metal breakdown pun was brilliant. The fact that he's just like, oh, for fuck's sake. But the fact that he can recognize that that's a pun.
Yeah.
And sort of have an eye roll moment kind of shows it. But also like the fact that he's like, did you tie the knots properly, Jamie? Oh yeah, no one's getting out of that. Crash. Cyberman gets out. I really need to teach you how to tie knots, Jamie. They're such a great double act.
They are a fantastic double act,
And it's not just Jamie being dragged along; he's an active component in it, which is brilliant. Whereas, I liked the Doctor and Vicky together.
Yeah.
But Vicky almost got dragged along with the Doctor a lot of the time. Do you know?
Yeah.
Whereas Jamie's like an active participant in their friendship.
Yeah, no, like big time. Like, because you're seeing about the Vicky being dragged along, it's like almost like the Crusade, where it was like Vicky is just kind of there.
Yeah.
Whereas like here, Jamie is like the McCrimmon effect is definitely in effect here, because like, it's like I'll open the doors and everyone just kind of looks at you. It's like, well, it's like, shut up. I really enjoyed that. What else was there? His kind of back and forth again with the Doctor and Victoria. It's really good. It's just like the holding hands part. It was just funny. Like, it's like both of them hold up their hands to take Victoria, and then they just grab each other's hands, and it's like that whole.
Yeah, we did finally get to something that you've quoted several times over the years, which was when Victoria was saying like, "Isn't the skirt a bit short?" And the Doctor's like, "You're fine. Look at Jamie's."
Yeah, exactly.
And he's like, "Yeah. Well, no, wait, what?"
Oh, like there's got to be some stuff coming up with that kilt that I crack up at. But there's like obviously like a lot of people know about Doctor Who is that the companions, and they only ever see the female companions, and there's like the whole thing of female companions scream or whatever the case is, and like obviously we've discussed that and we've shown that that's not always the case back with people like Barbara and with Polly and Vicky to an extent, and even like Susan, like you had her we talked about Susan and her up and down moments, but I think the earlier male companions they get looked over.
I think male companions get looked over in general. So like, I was trying to think, and I don't want to blame one Doctor for that being the case. But if I had to blame one Doctor for that being the case, it's Pertwee.
Yeah, because
Pertwee was the James Bond Doctor, and he had the Bond girls. And I think a lot of people, because of the changeover to colour and because of the fact that like we don't have any missing episodes after that point, I think a lot of people, because Pertwee was their first, the Doctor with one female companion sort of became
the standard.
Became the standard, do you know? And, after that, we do have male companions, but, like, Pertwee didn't have a single male companion. He had Eunice, but they weren't his companions.
Yeah.
Do you know? And the fact that, like, he described them as, like, his assistant and all this kind of stuff. So I think a lot of that falls at the feet of
John Pertwee
and, like, Barry Letts and Terence Dix to an extent. But you're going back to Jamie and our original point, I think
Jamie proves that one, we said that a historical character can work as part of the crew, but also that you can have like a really good male companion in there, and he can help bolster the, like, as opposed to being the secondary companion, he can be the primary companion. And it doesn't get old,
I think as well what we see, and like this story, and like I said, there are few sort of, we saw it a lot last week as well, but particularly in this story, since they've gotten over the issues from last week, is that the companions up to now with the exception of Susan,
Mm-hmm.
have been travelling companions.
Yeah.
And the Doctor has had a sort of fatherly or grandfatherly or like quirky uncle
Yeah.
type dynamic. Jamie and Doc Pat are friends.
Yeah, because that's the thing is like Jamie gave up. He gave up like the rest of his life essentially when he made the decision to help them get back to the TARDIS back near Culloden, and like this is his life now. So yeah, it is essentially the Doctor and Jamie his Gal Friday essentially.
Yeah, like as opposed to it just being like a travelling
Oh
companion.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
Stephen was a travelling companion.
yeah,
Jamie and Doc Pat, they're actually friends.
yeah.
And you can see they have a friendship and not just a companionable relationship.
Mm.
If that makes sense.
No, absolutely, that makes 100% sense. One last note I have about Jamie is his like there's that scene where he picks up the Cyberman's gun and he just kind of starts firing at the Cybermen as they come at the hatch. And it's like again, it's not something like it's different for Jamie, I think, because like we've had people that would have had different reactions to that sort of action. Whereas like with Ben, there was this is a necessity, you know, I'm doing this to protect people. Whereas with Jamie, because Jamie was raised like he is a warrior essentially. I don't think he has second thoughts about picking up a thing.
No.
He doesn't have the after effects of it, and that doesn't. I don't think it makes him any less of a character or an interesting character to talk about than Ben, because it'll be interesting to see where that sort of mentality could work against what the Doctor is trying to do in the given story.
Yeah, like it's not that Jamie enjoys it, but that he's comfortable enough to do the action without second guessing himself.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So Victoria next.
Yeah, so Victoria has surprised me in this story. And I'm really hoping she continues to surprise me. Similar to Polly, I had a vision of Victoria in my mind where it's Jamie and the Doctor have to take care of Victoria. I don't know why I have that in my head. I don't know if it's just a cultural, like a Doctor Who fandom accepted norm for Victoria.
I think it's a fact that a lot of the promotional images you would ever see of Deborah Watling as Victoria is her in the screaming pose.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's that mental kind of assumption that, oh, this is all she ever does.
Yeah. I was very surprised in this story how much I loved her in this story. It was a very strong moment for her. Yeah, she has moments where she's afraid. Like, she didn't want to go into the tomb in the fucking first place.
No.
She's clearly, you know, she'll scream, and she screams in a very 1800s kind of way.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because that's where she's from.
Yeah.
But she also shows great bravery, and she clearly doesn't want to be considered weak. Several times we see her standing up to people saying, "No, I'm not fucking staying behind. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I want to go with you as well." She gets stuck right. Like, she was willing to use a gun with no hesitation whatsoever. To take down the Cybermat. I was laughing my ass off. Like, she assessed the situation. This woman has lost her fucking mind. And drugged me and everything. The hatch is closed. I'll run off and get Hopper. And so she runs away to get Hopper. And the conversations she has with him and his second in command are so fucking funny. It's brilliant because she's clearly getting so exasperated with them. It's like, don't call me Vic. What the hell is wrong with you?
Like, absolutely, because like I'm the same as you, right? And I remember when I watched these stories about 10 years ago, my takeaway from it was that Victoria's like the token screaming companion. Now, that's not to say that, look, you know, obviously she does scream at certain points, but as we've always said, it's not the screaming that is the takeaway, it's what they do after that scream.
After the scream. Yeah.
After the scream. That's what you look into, like what makes that character who they are. And so here it's like, you know, Victoria is, you know, she screams whatever, but then picks up a gun, shoots a Cybermat, not a bother to her, sees the Doctor being grabbed by a Cyberman, picks up a flask and hits the Cyberman with it. I was in knots when they're all standing around the hatch in preparation for what's coming up, and she just picks up a bigger box, and it's just like, what did you learn from the last time? Something bigger. It's just like, I thought that was great. I also laughed at, the whole thing. She was worried about the clothes that she had picked, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure the TARDIS has got a big enough wardrobe to have something that to your aesthetic, so you can't really complain about the clothes that you picked being a bit much.
I don't think she was complaining. I think she was just concerned that she clearly picked something that she thought was nice.
Yeah.
And then she was slightly concerned she'd overdone it.
I suppose, yeah.
It actually reminded me of, this is going to sound so bizarre, from my confirmation, I got this, okay, I'm in my confirmation in the year 2000, right? So forgive 12-year-old Tricia really bad fashion choices, right? I had this I bought this like velvety top, skirt and cardigan combo. And the skirt was quite long and went down past my knee. I looked a bit silly. So I took it in to get it tailored, to get it raised a little bit, like above the knee, so it wouldn't look as stupid. And I remember, like, after picking it up, coming back home, putting on the really nice, like, giant wedge heel shoes that I'd gotten to go with it, and coming down to show my parents, and my dad was just like, nope. He was like, when you kneel down in mass, that skirt is just going to right up. And he made me go out and buy something else to wear because of the way the material of the velvet was. When they took it up, it actually bunched up a bit further than they had anticipated. And this sort of reminded me of that, of just being like, okay, is the skirt long enough?
You just like shift your own awkwardly. But I know I enjoyed Victoria in this because, like, this is her first adventure in the TARDIS, and she comes out of the gate strong, I think.
Oh yeah, very strong story for her. What I love as well is, I think it's Hopper at one point actually gives her credit for screaming. Her screaming actually serves a purpose at one point. I was like, you did good to scream there, because that was important.
She's got some sass on her as well. Like because Hopper's like going, I'm not going down there to risk my life, and she just makes some kind of backhanded compliment, going, I'm sure that they're going to appreciate your situational observation or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, what it was that when she tricked your one into thinking there was another Cybermat. Yeah. By screaming the same way she had the first time, and then Hopper was like, "Hey, good play with the scream. That worked really well." It's like, she clearly knows how to use how people perceive her. It's similar to how Polly used to be able to do it, but like this is really playing into the fact that like she can use her screaming as a distraction, which I thought was brilliant.
I liked her. I liked her in this, and so I'm hoping that trend continues. Now with the supporting characters, like, we have Hopper, and even though Parry is there he's there for the entirety of the story, he does nothing.
No,
he contributes
nothing. He gives out, that's about it.
Yeah, he just contributes nothing. So we just went with Hopper in terms of the story-based companions. What did you think of Hopper?
Hopper and his second in command, the fucking accent. Jesus Christ.
Just like flashbacks to the gunfighters.
Like, it's actually worse than the gunfighters. Like, nowadays, you hear stories about how, like, the people who hired Hugh Laurie for House didn't realise he was English. And there's a little bit of a thing of, like, English actors can do American accents, but American actors can't do English accents very well. It's sort of this stereotype, whatever. That was not true back in the 60s. It is so over the top, and like it almost sounds like the two of them were doing a stage production of Grease. Yeah. It was so funny and over the top. I didn't really have a whole lot to say about him other than that because it was so fucking distracting.
We were just saying, like a stage production of Grease, like this would mean a whole new definition of a hickey from Kinnicky if that's the case. One thing, the only thing that kind of made Hopper kind of an interesting character for me is you haven't watched like Peter Jackson's King Kong, have you?
I have.
You know the ship captain that like brings them to the island. Like he's clearly a guy that does not like where they're going, but I'm getting paid. I think he's very reminiscent of that character here.
Yeah, because the thing about him and that it's again like the accent was very distracting. Very distracting.
It's your last chance for that. It's your last.
No, isn't. No,
Yeah.
it's not as bad as that.
Yeah.
It was just distracting. That was distracting because it was like a drill through my brain. This is distracting because it's funny and I was just laughing my ass off every time he opened his mouth. But I love the fact that when they realize something's wrong, he's just like, I'm not your security people. Like, I'm not your security assembly. That's what Toberman was meant to be for.
Yeah.
I'm the pilot. You rented my ship.
Yeah.
We flew here. One of my guys already died. Fuck off.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and fix my ship. I don't care if there are things here trying to kill you. You're the one who wanted to come and find them. I'll come back and get you when the ship is fixed. And he's just like, he's perfectly happy to just leave him there.
Yeah, and like again, I thought it was a really clever way to kind of keep the story focused in the tombs. It was like that going, look, I'll take you out of here, but I don't trust you because someone sabotaged my ship.
I think the only reason why he came back to help is because Vicky kind of played the damsel in distress.
Yeah.
I think had it been anyone else who ran to him to get help, he probably would have been like,
no,
I'm fucking busy, like.
Yeah.
Something wrong with the ship, like, I'm fucking shit to do, like.
Oh, no. Jesus. And yeah, so we have Hopper as a hero or a companion, but maybe his accent should be a villain of the piece. I don't know.
Oh. So, on to our actual villains.
Yep.
We have Toberman, Captain, Klieg, and the Cybermen. And I'd kind of rank them almost in that order.
Yeah.
In terms of least bad to worst bad.
Worst bad.
So what do you think of Toberman?
I thought he was interesting. Because like he sacrifices himself to save the group at the end. But it's not. I think it's rather than being an altruistic thing, I think it's to get revenge for Kaftan.
I agree. 100%.
And like it's always kind of funny, when you have like villainous characters that are incredibly loyal to each other, because like sometimes you get it's almost like a Cherub and Captain Pike thing from the Smugglers, where there was like I'll work with you just until like it looks like I'm going to be the ascendancy, that I'm going to fucking pull the rug out from under you. So I do like it when the villains kind of are on the same page, and it's like like Toberman is a villain, like from the very start. Like he relishes the idea of sabotaging the ship or fucking potentially killing people. Like he is like that hulking brute, and even like his voice is very deep, and it's like yes, we're going to do this type thing. I think Roy Stewart did a great job with the acting component of it, because even though he's like the strongman of the story, there is a time there where he actually is terrified, and I thought that was really well done. And his his rage, his anger, and again his self-sacrifice at the end, I liked Toberman as a villain in this one, I think.
Yeah, I had first written down that he was like a typical hired strongman. And I'm actually going to retract. I don't think that for the time, I don't think he's the typical hired strongman, because that's what we had last week.
Yeah.
Toberman clearly loves his job.
Yeah.
Like when they were talking about sabotaging the ship, he was standing there grinning like a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Clearly, like I said, relishing the idea. And like anytime Captain gave him something to do, he clearly, like, there was no sort of like, I'm indebted to her, or she owns me, or like they've paid so much for my services, I have to do what they say.
Yeah, no.
He's clearly very loyal.
He's a crack the knuckles hired hand,
Yeah, but like he's also like he's not just doing it because that's what he was hired to do.
Yeah. Oh no,
You
but
know,
like, it's like, he relishes his job. Like, he relishes working for his boss. So it's
yeah,
like, that's what I mean, like, by a crack the knuckles type of person.
yeah. I do like his turnaround at the end because it's not a complete 180.
Hmm.
Like we said, he clearly shows great loyalty for Kaftan.
Yeah.
And in the end, that's what snaps him out of it.
And like, it's the Doctor that's using, like, the Doctor recognizes that it's like, if we're going to get Toberman on our side, we have to use his connection to Kaftan to get him on our side.
But like, he doesn't join our heroes as such. It becomes more of the enemy of my enemy type thing. Like, I think had he been able to shut the doors at the end without dying, I don't think he would have gone off and like paired up with anyone else. Like, do you know what I mean? He probably would have gone with Hopper to go home, but like it wouldn't have been like, yay, we all survived together. Like, no, like he's not friends with these people.
I know. I think he probably would have. He would have probably followed the Doctor and the others back to the TARDIS and then tried to kill them, because he probably holds them responsible for Kaftan's death.
Yeah, but like, I think all he would have tried to do is get away from where he was. Like,
oh yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Big time, big time.
Like, there would have been no like, he wasn't redeemed.
No.
In my eyes, there wasn't a redemption there. He was redeemed from being a proto Cyberman.
Yes.
Because he was like mid changeover or whatever. He was redeemed from that.
Yeah. And as I said, like, his like sacrifice isn't altruistic. It's like, I'm taking you with me, fucker, type thing,
Yeah. I think of all the strongman characters we've seen,
mm-hmm.
and particularly of our strongman people of color characters, because we've had a few of those that have been a bit stereotypical.
Yeah.
I think he's probably the most complex that we've had. And he had a character to play, not just a stereotype to play.
It's funny, he's the most one-dimensional in the fact that he's an actual villain. He's an out-and-out villain, but he's complex in his...
his villainy.
In his villainy.
I think, like, comparing him to, like I said, some of the other people of colour characters that we've had up until now, who've actually been played by people of colour, as opposed to...
Yeah.
Whatever. He actually has a character,
mm-hmm.
as opposed to a stereotype, or as opposed to the silent person standing in the corner. He has lines.
Mm-hmm.
He has interactions with other people. He has a fully fleshed character. Whereas like last week, as much as I loved Campbell last week, he didn't really have a character as such.
But and again, it's because like of the fact that I think dialogue goes a long way towards, like, I'm a big believer that, like, kind of like facial acting can get over a whole lot of stuff, but you need to get a kind of a groundwork for how good that character is with a small bit of dialogue thrown into it. And I think Kimball could have been good, but and I said it, like, like, I think he would have made it for a very interesting companion, but not for very long because of the limitations of the speech thing.
My thing with Campbell, I slightly disagree with you.
Okay.
Right? I think Campbell was hindered by the fact that they made him mute. That's true. I don't think you need speech as a necessity. There are plenty of movies and TV shows that have mute characters that are very well developed. I think the problem is Campbell didn't make independent choice. Like, we didn't see him acting for himself. Like, at the end of this, Toberman makes the choice.
Oh yeah,
to close the
doors. I was wondering what you meant by independent choice. Yeah, no,
like, he makes that independent choice of his own volition.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with Campbell last week, he was being told to stand in a corridor in the dark, and he did that.
Yeah.
He was then helping Jamie, and then it was protecting Victoria.
Yeah.
But like, he didn't have an independent action on his own, if that makes sense.
Like, I think the only independent action that Kimball probably had was the fact he decided to trust Jamie, based on the fact that Jamie saved him.
Yeah.
So,
but that again, that's him being somewhat indebted to somebody else.
And also, I feel like a real idiot now because I'm thinking back to some movie and TV show performances of non-speaking characters or non-speaking actors that have been absolutely amazing. And
Yeah,
it's like,
like The Shape of Water is like
The Shape of
one
Water
of my favorite films ever.
Shape of Water, A Quiet Place, the episode of Next Generation with the
Oh yeah, what the fuck is it called? The guy who had the three
three people, like,
three people
I
speaking
feel
for
like
him.
it's like in the, like, I suppose like in the context of, because we were just talking about Doctor Who and like your silent character performances, and I kind of get one tunnel vision. I can't think of all these amazing, like that little girl from The Quiet Place is fantastic.
I think the difference was that the communication that Campbell had was very action driven. It was, I'll go do this.
Yeah.
It wasn't conversation. It wasn't his thoughts or his feelings or anything else. It was just, I am a cardboard cutout of a person, and you can understand, like, you know, Victoria saying that, you know, she'll protect him, and his response is just to flex his muscles.
Yeah.
Do you know, there's no attempt at real two-way communication there.
Yeah, there's
You
no,
know?
like,
It was very rudimentary.
there's no Iron
Anyway.
Groot moment.
Yeah, taking it back to Toberman, though, because we've sort of gone off track for a second. I think what makes Toberman interesting is that the fact that he clearly loves his job immediately separates him from what Campbell was like.
Yeah.
Because Toberman is not just doing this because he's being paid or because he's indentured in any way.
Yeah.
He's doing it because he enjoys it. And he doesn't help the Doctor because the Cybermen are evil.
Yeah.
He helps the Doctor because he had great loyalty to Captain, and this thing killed her. And fuck you.
Now, we briefly touched on it there, okay? And Toberman, the character of Toberman, is one that is, in certain circles, he's viewed as a controversial character because of the fact that he's a person of color in the strongman role. And I just want to know, like, did you, like, when you were watching this, did you get that vibe?
A bit, sir. So there's very real concerns with minority groups in TV and film.
Yeah.
You know, like in horror films, it's always the black guy who dies first.
Yeah.
Do you know? Kill off your gays being a really big concern within the LGBTQ community. And, you know, having the token person of color character be this stereotype can be a problem. And it was a concern for us last week because they essentially said that he was a savage and he couldn't, and they literally took away his ability to speak, which, you know, isn't the nicest thing for one of a handful of people of color characters you actually have on your show. I think what makes Toberman different, though, is Toberman's character is not defined by his race. You could have hired someone built like Arnold Schwarzenegger to play this role, and the role would not change.
Yeah.
The difference with last week and Campbell is that he was set up to be this sort of Eastern, simple, in quotation marks, character, and he was a stereotype.
Yeah.
I think while Toberman can be seen as a stereotype, I don't think that was intentional because nothing in the story is said about his race or where he's from or anything like that.
None of the, I suppose, traits or stereotypes of people of colour are used to describe Toberman at any stage by anyone in the story.
Yeah, none of the, and particularly like, again, going back to, none of the historical derogatory or derivative statements are used to describe him, which was my problem with Campbell. If he was just a strong man, I wouldn't have cared. But the fact that he was describing him as simple and this kind of stuff, and the racial undercurrent was fairly evident.
And like obviously we've discussed, you know, terms of like, you know, racial undercurrents in previous stories. Like, you know, we had our discussion about the Celestial Toymaker, we had our discussion about Jamaica in The Smugglers, but here I don't think this portrayal or this character falls into that category.
No, like, and the way I ask myself that question is, it's the same. I ask myself that question for a lot of roles actually. Is if you switched the actor out,
Hmm.
and if you put, in this case, if you put a white actor in that role, would you have to change how you've written the character?
Hmm.
And the answer for that is no.
Yeah.
For Toberman. For Jamaica, I think you probably would have changed it.
Yeah.
For Campbell last week, I got the sense. Now, bearing in mind, this isn't. Also, last week wasn't the show making a comment, it was a character in the show
Sure.
making
Yeah.
the comment.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, I think Toberman is just a better
Yeah.
character
Yeah.
and a more fleshed out and a more colorblind character.
Yeah. No, like I agree. I think you could switch anyone into Toberman's role, and it's not an issue.
And bearing in mind, this is me speaking as like a white woman who doesn't know a whole lot historically about minorities in film and acting and stuff like
Mm.
that. So this is purely just based on my own experience and things that I've watched. It's quite possible that people did take great issue with this. I didn't see anything in my notes looking it up. But this is just from my perspective.
But again, like I just think it was like I don't think it was from the time, but I think it's kind of modern audiences looking back at the time. Cool. So moving on to Kaftan.
I have two questions. Well, I have a comment and a question.
Okay, what is your comment?
Conniving bitch got what she deserved. That's my
Okay.
comment.
Yeah, and your question?
What was the point of her?
So, do you know who she reminds me of?
Who?
Poppaea from the Romans.
Yeah. Like, was Kaftan also a logician? Like, because it was the Brotherhood of Logicians.
Well,
And she's not a man.
she's not a
She's not a brother.
no.
She's not a man.
she's not a man. Like, yeah, because like I suppose it's like usually those kind of like secret societies, they're either for multigender, they're the society of, whereas yeah, if it's one way or the other. I'd say no. I don't know whether she was romantically involved with Klieg or if they were familiar. Like there was a familial connection there. I don't know. She's clearly a bankroll member of that society.
Mm.
So
But was that it though? Was that just because like
I think that's probably like she's obviously she's cunning in her own regards, but I think she's probably a bankroll member as opposed to being a logician.
yeah, because like I wonder what she was meant to get out of it. Like, do you know?
Yeah, no, I'd say
Like, is she like does she bankroll the Brotherhood of Logicians?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't really understand her motivation.
But see, that's why I liken her to Poppaea because like I get the impression like because she's the bankroller, I think she just wants to be like having that like, power behind the throne type relationship with them. Because if it all goes to plan, then like obviously they have a huge army and it's better to be seated at the right hand of the devil than in his path, that type of thing,
Mm. One question I have for you as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this is two questions I had.
You lied.
Which in first, I always say one question and I always have a million.
You're like Columbo. Just one more thing.
Toberman's loyalty.
Yes.
Do you think it was just to Kaftan or do you think it was to both of them?
Oh, just the Kaftan.
Yeah, I'm the same.
I think it was just the
I
Kaftan.
think that was also what she contributed to this.
Yeah.
Was she contributed the bodyguard because the bodyguard was hers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she's the one, like, had Klieg survived and she hadn't,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Tobin would have given a rat's bollocks about it.
Oh yeah, he would have been like like it's like help me. It's like nah. I'll look back and I'll say no.
Yeah, it's like or like if Klieg was in trouble, Tobin would only help if Kaftan told him to.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else on her?
No, I think that was just pretty much it. It was just like that she is like Poppaea in the sense of she wants to be the power behind the throne. Or like she at least wants to have a taste of the power that she's not going to be a victim of whatever plan the logicians have.
Mm. Also, so she put sleeping tablets or something in Victoria's coffee. But like, Victoria then woke up.
Yeah.
And I was like, did you not put enough in there? Like,
I'd say like it was probably that she didn't put enough in there.
yeah, I don't know. I thought that she was there. She's a bit of a conniving bitch. She got what she deserved. I probably won't remember her after next week. Like, I'll probably purge her from my brain. Move on.
Purge. So now we have Klieg.
Klieg, this is a typical Doctor Who villain. He believes that the evil aliens can be controlled, and then when he sees that they can't, he still believes he can get the upper hand, and he never learns from his mistakes.
Yeah, so like, much like Torberman, he's one-dimensional in the fact that he's a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Like, he is the literal definition of insanity. Repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. It's like, just no, like, stop. The real danger of Klieg isn't Klieg himself. I think it's the collateral damage of his actions on other people.
Yeah, like if you compare Klieg to, what's his face from last week?
Maxtable.
Yeah.
Who lives in Whitstable.
Yeah.
On his bicycle buying vegetables.
I couldn't remember. All I remembered was Whitstable. I didn't remember his actual name. Anyway, the difference between Klieg and Maxtable is Maxtable also kind of fell in this bucket.
Mm-hmm.
But Maxtable wasn't trying to control the Daleks.
No.
He was banking on them keeping a promise.
Yeah.
Which was stupid from the perspective of someone who knows the Daleks as characters.
Yeah.
From his perspective, it was less stupid.
Yes.
Right? From an audience perspective, super dumb. Character perspective, Klieg, though, is to your point, like, he wants to control them. You can't control them. Oh, but I can try again.
Yeah.
Oh, but I can try again. Oh, but I can try again. And you're like, it's not going to work, dumbass. Like, stop. And clearly he's the type of guy who thinks he's the smartest person in the universe. Yet he didn't realise that the first room they walked into had 2 doors.
Like, this was the thing, was that, like, if you are the head of the Brotherhood of Magicians, that is the shortest lived secret society of all time. Because like, it's like he was frustratingly dumb.
Yeah. I imagine that his Brotherhood of Magicians is like is it from The Simpsons?
The Stonecutters.
Yeah. Do you know that they sit around, like, drinking and talking about how they're the best ever.
Yeah.
And then one of them goes out to do something and is royally fucked up.
Dear God, man, we're a bunch of ponderers. We're not a bunch of doers.
Yeah.
But like it's like that one thing of, like, I suppose, like, these kind of like secret scientific cabals, like we'll see like throughout the run of Doctor Who. It's like, okay, like some of you are legitimately threatening, but others of you fall into that whole tunnel vision. Oh, we can't possibly fail. We're the smartest people in this room,
Yeah.
I was like, well, like, you're the smartest person in the room. Try and find your fucking way out of it through the one door that's there. Yeah, so like he was an annoyance more so than anything. He is he reminds me of like what is it? That fucking, whenever you play a fighting game with someone, it's just that person that uses the sneaky toe poke of doom the whole time. It's like, would you just go away? You're not good. So onto the Cybermen.
Indeed. So we've a change up for the Cybermen this time around. So we have the Cyber Controller with his big giant brain. And remind me.
Yep.
In Moonbase, were their insides made of shaving foam?
See, the only time we ever got to see a Cyberman dissolve was in the animation. And there's a lot of sparking, but there is also sort of like that foamy type substance that comes out of them.
Okay, so maybe they are made of.
But we didn't know if that was the control units reacting to the poly cocktail as opposed to their insides.
I could have really done without the computerized didgeridoo.
Which was the computerized didgeridoo now again?
So when they're talking, their voices are computerized, but there's this constant computerized didgeridoo noise.
Oh, okay.
the whole time.
Because I was like, I don't remember something going wom 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 wom.
But that literally, it just sounds like a didgeridoo that's been run through a computer just constantly. And I'm like, I could have fucking done without that, thank you. It's not as bad as the sing-song stuff from 10th Planet, because I wasn't a fan of that.
No.
But the computerized didgeridoo noise was just...
I liked the fact that they kept the continuity of these being Telosian Cybermen, the same ones from the moon base. Because obviously the whole shtick of the Cybermen is that they upgrade themselves. So every time we see them, there's the potential for them to look different.
Also, we get a bit more of the explanation that we didn't get in the moon base because they cut it.
Yeah, they cut it. So I actually like that. With the cyber controller, though, I like the fact that there's like a figurehead. I think it's pretty cool. However, it's just one thing I never understand is like, why is it that you expose your weak spot by having it in a transparent dome at the top of your head?
They will get better.
Yeah, and then they kind of get worse. But no, like you know me, like I've talked about the Daleks, ad nauseum, over like how I wanted to see, like more of the hierarchy, more of their society, and we got teasers of it until last week when we saw Jabba the Dalek. And whereas here, like, oh cool, like, it's a cyber controller, and it's like, is there one cyber controller? Are there multiple cyber controllers dependent on like where they are? Is there like an overall supreme cyber controller? We'll never know. And this overall, actually, this introduces the Cybermats, which our regular listener Earl Green said caused the audio issue we had a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. The Cybermats. Okay. Lose the eyes and the weird frilly skirt that it was wearing.
I don't think that's a frilly skirt. I think that's meant to be like its legs, scaly legs.
It's meant to be a biomechanoid thing.
Yeah.
Just make it mechanical. Just get rid of the bio stuff, because it does not age at all.
The googly eyes on top of them didn't really help. Yeah.
The antennae I don't mind. The antennae can stay.
Mm-hmm.
That those I don't mind. But the googly eyes, the frilly millipede skirt thing, can go. I don't mind the underside of them where you see that they kind of move by like moving flaps back and forward. That's fine. But like, also, right? They are so loud. How can they possibly sneak up on anybody? Like, Kaftan is a moron.
So like, you have to wonder, like, is that just because of the audio dampening technology at the time in terms of the recording, or is that actually how they sound?
I don't know, but that they gave them a specific sound, and they had it set at a particular decibel level. They can control that shit. They can control that shit.
Who did we compare to Sauron's full-bodied contact chamber orchestra? Oh, we said that they were fucking, like, they were not subtle.
I can't remember. I need to go back and have a listen. What the fuck was that?
I don't think it was the Zarbi, because I think it was after that. Yeah, it's probably. If anyone can help us with that, who do we compare Sauron's full-bodied contact chamber orchestra?
It wasn't the Mechanoids, was it?
No, I don't think so.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, Cybermats look a bit stupid. Get rid of the extras and just leave them as a mechanical thing. I guess I don't mind the leg things; those are fine. But get rid of the millipede skirt and the googly eyes. Also, like, loud. Like, turn down the fucking volume. You're meant to be subtle. Like, the whole idea is to sneak up on people. Don't fucking project your presence. I think the Cybermats are interesting. The one thing that I didn't like about the Cybermats in terms of their role in the story, so their design and stuff I took issue with, but that's neither here nor there really in the grand scheme of things. Their role in the story, there's one thing I took issue with, which is, what exactly do they do? So,
as far as I'm aware, they're like they're infiltrator units that the Cybermen use. Like, I think
do
like, do you remember? I think they were possibly laying the groundwork for the Cybermats in the moon base. Over the. Oh, it looks like something has been eating into the stores because it looks like we have rats type of thing. But no, I think their infiltration units to sabotage power supplies and on the inside.
Okay, what from this story led you to believe that's what they do? And ignore your future knowledge.
Okay, ignoring my future knowledge, that is the only logical thing that I can think of as to their purpose.
One of them attacks Kaftan.
Yeah.
She passes out.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
But see, they're on home turf, so they don't really need to necessarily fuck with anything else.
But we don't see any markings on her. We don't see. So that's my thing about them, is I don't know what they do. I don't know what their purpose is.
Okay. I'm going to assume that they're infiltrator units.
Okay. Based purely on no evidence whatsoever.
Yeah, no, based purely on no evidence whatsoever. That's the only thing I can assume that they would do, is that they infiltrate to do sabotage, and as well possibly, also going off the fact that they rendered Kaftan unconscious and they were told to target Toberman's brain. So maybe they're also assigned to incapacitate any potential cyber conversions.
Okay. See, this is what I'm missing though in the story. Yeah. It was probably in terms of the plot and the contributions of each of the characters, it's probably the one that I was they were an interesting introduction because they expanded on the Cybermen.
Yeah.
But what was their purpose?
I'm actually getting a funny flashback. So Big Finish did a thing called the Companion Chronicles, where they had a previous companion come back and narrate a story that a non-televised story. They had Maureen O'Brien for the first Doctor. They had Wendy Padbury for the second Doctor, and there was a third Doctor story that involved someone going to the dentist, and I think in their molar was an embryonic cybermat, and it comes out of the guy's mouth and whatever. And just as that sound effect of it coming out of the guy's mouth and attacked. Now, I was listening to this at 5:30 in the morning walking to work, and as this happened, someone walked past me behind me. I nearly shat myself. I jumped a foot into the air, and the guy looked at me, and I was trying to just calm down again.
Yeah, I think the Cybermen in this story, we got an interesting development of them. We've said that when we have these recurring villains, it's nice to see them grow and evolve as each story comes on. I think we've got that. You actually just reminded me that I downloaded a new Big Finish story today, which is the one that has Elizabeth Sladen's daughter doing Sarah Jane.
Oh, that's awesome!
It came out this week, so I'm sure I'll mention that story when we eventually get to Revenge of the Cybermen, because it's a rewrite of that.
Oh yeah, I was about to ask, what was it called again?
The Lost Stories is the sort of Big Finish series that it's in, and it's called Return of the Cybermen. I
knew it was an R word, I just couldn't think of what it was.
Yeah, because it was the original story proposal for what became Revenge of the Cybermen.
Oh, that sounds cool.
So completely side note, but I would forget to tell you otherwise.
Future knowledge. Cool. So, any other notes on the Cybermen of Telos?
No, I'm curious to see, because obviously we knew that they were coming back because we've mentioned it. Yeah. But I'm curious to see how they come back again.
Yes.
Because having them in tombs on Telos made sense.
Mm-hmm.
But time travel.
Yes.
So the next time we see them, is it going to be before this?
After this?
Is it going to be after this?
Concurrently to this?
Yeah, we don't know. So I'm really interested to see more. And I think it's interesting to see them evolving as characters. I think the Cybermats could use a bit more development on what they do.
Yeah. And less googly eyes.
And millipede skirt.
We like to be fashionable too.
No. You shouldn't. So now we come to our overall thoughts on this story. So, Paddington, I will hand it over to you. First story of season 5, first full Troughton story we've gotten to watch. Another story of the Cybermen. It's not the first or last of that. First story with the Cyber Controller. There we go.
Yeah.
What did you think of this story?
So, one of my first thoughts about this was, even for a 4-parter, I felt this was incredibly fast paced. Like I think it actually flew by. I didn't notice the because normally when I review an episode, it takes me like maybe about an hour between stopping and going back and like typing over on certain things and changing things. But I didn't even notice that time going past. I don't even think it felt like a full hour as I was doing it. But there's a real kind of like H.P. Lovecraft at the Mountains of Madness feel to the story, in the sense of like, you know, it's a forgotten tomb, it's isolated, like the very limited use of the Cybermen as a group, as a threat, as opposed to like, you know, the use of the Cybermats and the Cyber Controller. Also showing off the stupidity of human, air quotes here, logic. I liked the introduction of Victoria. I think she has a great rapport with the Doctor and with Jamie. Jamie! I like the way that she says his name for some reason. Great performances from the main crew. Like really, really solid performances. The takeaways, though, primarily come from the supporting cast. Supporting cast being the characters of Klieg and Parry. Parry does nothing. Like, you expect him to be a body for the body count, and he doesn't even do that. He's just there. So I didn't particularly like that. I would have liked to seen a small bit more of Hopper's sort of kind of like slightly dickish presence. But again, I don't know if that would have potentially impacted the story negatively. So, you know, I'll leave that by the wayside. But Klieg, I think, was just like, he's a dumb villain. He's just like, please, for the love of God, you thrive on using logic and your intelligence, and you want to take over the world. It's like, man, you won't even get to the bus stop to launch your protest. You know, he's the type of guy who was like, you know, what's that joke? Someday my ship will come in, and knowing my luck, I'll be at the fucking airport. Like, he's that type of thing. So I think with that regards, I give it the story a very solid 4 out of 5.
Cool.
And like we kind of talked in there, I think of all the human-based villains, Toberman was actually the most interesting.
I would agree.
Yeah,
I'd agree on that.
So what are your thoughts on this story?
So overall, I really enjoyed this. I thought it was short, sweet, and to the point, which I really liked. There was no filler in this story. It was action and plot and story for 4 solid episodes, and then you're done and you're like, holy shit. Yeah. Like, I thought it was really, really good. My positives on top of that, you know, it being short, sweet, and to the point, I liked. I'm kind of a fan of 4-parters. It's my personal preference.
Yeah.
So I like that. My pluses were, I loved Victoria's introduction to the TARDIS. I didn't talk about it in her character piece or in the other two's character pieces because it was more of an overall impression. I loved the way they explained the TARDIS to her. They explained who the Doctor is. They explained what they do. They explained where they go, because this is a season opener.
Yeah.
So it's the first season of season 5. If you have a new audience coming in who hasn't seen anything else, this was a fantastic introduction in the first 2 minutes. You understand exactly who they are, what they're doing, what the ship is doing. You get it in fucking 2 minutes.
Yeah, because like, am I right in thinking that, or are we right in thinking that this is the first season opener that has direct continuity from the last episode of the preceding season? Because like in season 1, it ends with Reign of Terror, and then it hops into, but like, they
War Machines and the Smugglers.
Was War Machine? Oh yeah, sorry. War Machines was the
was the end of season 2 and straight into the Smugglers for season 3.
Yeah. No, sorry. Season 3 to season 4.
Or season 3 is season 4. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
But like, if you compare that, right?
Yeah.
So, smugglers, you also have new companions coming into the TARDIS.
Yeah.
You need to do the info dump, and I don't think it was done as well.
No, it wasn't.
As it was done
I
here.
think that's the reason why I think that like that was the thing in my head was that this is so definitively like the start of a new season, but bringing someone from the previous thing in. It's done really well because obviously it's shot differently. It's not shot. It's not the same camera work, or it's like, you know, it's almost like it's recorded off location type thing.
Yeah.
But you know, like yeah, no, I completely agree with it. But yeah, please continue.
Yeah, so I thought that was done fantastically well. I love that we've had some solid continuity here. So this is something that, in terms of continuity, we technically had continuity from the War Machines into the Faceless Ones into Evil of the Daleks. But here it's really much more defined because in describing how these Cybermen came to be in this tomb, we get mention of 10th Planet and what happened then. You destroyed our planet. That's covered. We also get mention of what happened at the moon base. That gets dropped in a very real way. And it's not our companions remembering, it's the villain remembering.
Yeah.
And I think that connection of those previous 2 episodes, I thought that was done really well because it's something we don't get from our Dalek stories. Our Dalek stories tend to be rather one-off from the point of view of the Daleks. Like, you know, we said it last week. Why do they have photographs? It creates this whole thing in your mind. But I don't want theatre of the mind. I want theatre of telly. So,
but the thing with the Daleks as well is that the time scale, because clearly it's the Daleks are a time traveling villain, whereas with the Cybermen it appears that it's like it's their linear timeline.
So far, yeah.
Yeah. Also, did you? I just noticed all the Cybermen stories have been 4 parts, and all the Daleks have been like 6+.
Was 10th Planet 4?
Yeah, it's 4.
They work well though, and like
they do. And
this is the thing. Like, if you're going for like the Cybermen trilogy of 10th Planet, Moonbase, and this one, for me, solid stories, fast paced, short, sweet, and to the point. Good development of the Cybermen. Good development of our companions and our Doctor. All 3 stories had all 3 of those on point. Moonbase obviously had more companions, so not everyone got an equal look in, but everyone got a moment. Jamie being the only possible exception there, but he was brand new. I think this is a brilliant end to that.
Yeah, that
trilogy of stories. I think it's fantastic. I'm changing my score now that I'm talking, by the way. Okay. What I didn't like.
Okay.
There is one thing I didn't like.
Yes.
Which is our supporting cast. I think Toberman was great. I think the guy who played him was great. Everybody else, they were overacting so much. It was incredibly distracting. And when we compare it to Moonbase, where we said that our supporting cast in Moonbase were perfect.
Yeah.
They were on point. The supporting cast was taking me out of the story. I was laughing at them. Like, Victoria's trying to convince them to find a way to open the door, to open the hatch to get everyone out. It should be a tense moment, and I'm sitting there laughing my ass off because their American accents are distracting. Or like, there's the other scientist, Viner,
yeah,
who that actor has been in the show before because he looked really familiar. He is fucking irritating like there's no tomorrow, and just the overacting.
Yeah.
It's only of the guest, like the supporting cast, because our core trio were fucking brilliant.
Oh, and
Toberman was brilliant. It's the remaining supporting cast.
It's complete night and day in terms of the level of like the performance of, and I think, I think that's why my score is the solid 4, because like with the exception of Toberman, everyone is either ridiculously dumb, unnecessary, or just annoying.
Yeah, but like for me, it's not the characters, it's the actors, which is unfortunate. Do you know? It's
Yeah.
or maybe it was the directing choice or whatever. Like, I think the characters would have worked. I mean, some stories have some bland characters.
Mm.
Whatever, that doesn't bother me all that much. But like when the character and the way, excuse me, when the way the character is portrayed takes me out of the story, that bothers me.
Mm.
However, that was the only thing that really bothered me. And I had written it down as a 4, and I'm now up to a 4.5. I think it was a fantastic story. I'm really glad I got to watch it. And like I said, I think when you tack it on to 10th Planet and Moonbase, it becomes like do we say the Edge of Destruction is the perfect ending of that opening trilogy?
Yeah.
This is the perfect ending of the opening Cybermen trilogy. I thought it was fantastic. So for me, it's a 4.5.
And it also leaves it open-ended with that Cybermat wandering off into the distance.
Yeah.
Two things I'm curious to see, okay? If, like, when the Cybermen do come back, how they will do in a longer story, say like a 6-parter, and how they will do in a non-confined setting. Because all three Cybermen stories have been in a sort of a base under siege type thing.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious to see it on a more like out in the open, because I think the Cybermen are like they're a great villain, and like we've kind of made some slight comparisons to the Borg. I'd love to see like just that huge collective of Cybermen trying to cyberize an entire planet, but actually as a full scale invasion as opposed to a sort of an infiltration unit for us like we had in 10th Planet. Yeah, so no, I think I'll stick with the 4. But again, like that's a really strong 4, you know.
I wouldn't say I was surprised that the story was this good, because I mean, you'd been sort of amping it up to me for a while of, oh, we're coming up to Tomb, oh, have you watched Tomb yet? And you fucking kept mentioning it.
Yeah.
And I know it's because it's the first, obviously, Patrick the whole way through.
Yeah.
But I went in with my expectations kind of lukewarm, because I didn't know how much of your hype was Patrick being the whole way through, or this is a good story.
I think it was primarily because like we talked about, this at times difficulties of getting into a loose cannon performance, and I was really excited to see what you would think of, because like we've talked so much about Patrick Troughton's acting that I wanted to see what you thought of a fully complete story where we get to see every nuance of his performance.
Yeah, no, like I said, massively impressed. I think it was great. Would recommend. Is
he climbing the rankings a small bit in your estimation?
No, he's still where he was last week.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed. In a 2-man race, he's still number 2.
Yeah. Obviously, obviously in a 2-man race, he's still number 2.
In the 2-man race, he's still number 2. In the 4-man race, I think he's still where he is.
Yeah.
But that's not a negative. I'm thoroughly enjoying him.
Yeah.
It's just Bill kind of went from he's fine to I love him and I want to protect him forever.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. And like that's
Patrick hasn't made that leap.
No, but like that's the I think that's the struggle when it comes to the ranking of doctors is like that. You have your ones that are complete like outliers, and they're like, fucking back of the pile, They're the Irish guy in like the 400-meter sprint type thing. They're just like at the back of the pile. Whereas others, like it's like it's a kind of a photo finish as to where they fall in the ranking. And I think because I haven't seen John Pertwee in so long, John Pertwee he's kind of slipping down a small bit. But
yeah, like I watched season 7 over Christmas. And I got the season 8 special set recently, though I probably won't watch that for a while, because I might hold on to that until we get to it.
Yeah.
But I like John. I think for me, I hadn't seen a lot of Pat. What I've seen, I really like. But it's not like, I don't know how to describe it without sounding mean. It's not mean. He hasn't changed in my rankings, but he's still awesome.
Yeah.
Did you know?
No. But I suppose it's like, obviously, as we made the comparison there, and I suppose this might be our final note before we sign off, was that we made the comparison like that. Like, you hadn't seen the full SWAT of Hartnell, and we're now making our way through the full catalogue of Troughton. Whereas with John, you had seen, bits and pieces. Like, you'd seen all of season 7.
I'd seen all of 7. I'd seen all of
11.
Is it 11 is his final season?
I think it is.
Whichever his 10 or 11, whichever one was his final. I'd seen all of that, and I'd seen a handful of the ones
of the scattering. Yeah, so like you had a bigger viewpoint of him. So like he is the James Bond Doctor because he brought a whole lot of stuff, new kind of things to Doctor Who. So compared to like watching 1 and 2 into their entirety and seeing the aesthetic of them, it might be slightly different in your estimation. It might go down, or it even might go like skyrocketing back up. You never know. Yeah. But
I said, like I think Bill was an exception because I thought he was alright before, but now I love him and must protect him from everybody. And thank you, Shane, for the little figurines that you painted for myself and Paddy. Doc Bill is coming to live in my house. But I don't think I'm going to get that with every one of them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Also, interesting fact, we are 1/8 of the way through our journey.
Wow.
This story is 1/8 of the way through. There are currently existing 296 stories, with the last festive special. So yeah, we're getting there. Slowly but surely, we're getting there.
Cool. Well, why don't we call it there before we jump any further around the timeline, which we've done a lot of.
Yeah, exactly. So as we said, first story of season 5, it's a really solid entry into the run of Patrick Troughton. So guys, join us next week when we join the Doctor, Jamie and Victoria as they get involved with the abominable snowmen.
Ooh.
I heard they're not so nice. So guys, bye.
Bye.